Surprise, it's Sam Ekstrom doing the cold open today instead of Ron Johnson, but I'm here to tell you that Ron has a very special guest today on the Ron Johnson Show. I'll tell you who it is after this.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. And it starts now.
Welcome into the Ron Johnson Show. I'm the producer, Sam Ekstrom. Here's the deal today. Ron has gone on vacation, but he's still got today's interview and a full slate of interviews for the next couple of weeks, and they're awesome. Today, he's got Rachel Baribeau, an author, mental health specialist. She's worked with the Gophers football team. She talks about the work she's done. She talks about PJ Fleck. She talks about what it's like for NFL players when their careers end. She's got some phenomenal life advice for you. She and Ron talk about that in the Hanging with Ron Johnson portion of the program. Today's program is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Won't keep you long. Ron Johnson, Rachel Baribeau. I will remind you to subscribe on YouTube to Locked On Sports Minnesota. Find us on Amazon Fire Stick and Roku devices, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's jump into Ron with Rachel in the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment.
This one is a special one for me. A guest by the name of Rachel Baribeau. And if you have not heard about her, please Google her. Please go to her Instagram or Twitter. Check her out. I was blessed with the opportunity to meet her literally right after my dad had passed away. That season was a blur. My wife had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she came with PJ Fleck to the Gophers, and she was helping the Gophers players out. And we'll talk about that and what her job is and what she does well and what she's been through. But it was just a ray of sunshine to meet her. And again, I feel like I'm tearing up, but I don't want to tear up. But she literally just explained to me that it's okay to not be okay. And I think in that moment, like I told a lot of people going through that, 2018 was a blur for me. 2018, 2019, all the way probably 2020 was a blur, just going through chemo, dealing with my dad. But Rachel was awesome, and I've watched her from afar. I love what she does. She's come on our show more than once now. She's now partnered up with Tanner Morgan's mom on some initiatives. So I want to welcome Rachel into the Ron Johnson Show. And Rachel, thank you for joining me. We were just talking a little bit, I know, about life and golf, and I was saying my father-in-law is the reason why I get to golf on golf trips. And like you said, the word decompress. Yeah. And so looking at this long season, I mean, I do the Vikings pregame show on Fox. I do the Vikings postgame show. I do the Gophers pregame show. I do the PJ Fleck show every week. And so it's a lot. It's a go. And then I do my own podcast as well daily. And so it's go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden the lights stop. It gets dim and there's nothing going on. And it's like, what do I do? Like, I don't have the crowd. I don't have the daily interaction with players and teammates. I don't have the, and you're, jumping out there quick. Super Bowl's done. We have our winner. Patrick Mahomes is MVP, even though Jalen Hurts should be MVP, but we're not going to, this show is not about that. Jalen Hurts is the MVP though, but I'm not going to talk about that. He is 300 yards passing, but we're not going to go there. But when you look at the season and you deal with a lot of athletes, what, in your opinion, what's the best thing for athletes to do in this time of their life, whether the lights are going off like for a little bit because it's going to turn back on when they're back to playing, or this is the end? Because a lot of college players, this becomes the end for them. They don't make it to the NFL. And so just in your job, how do you kind of address that?
I think it's super simple. It's super simple, but it's something we do not do, and we do not do enough with men. And that is what I aim to change. That's what I'm put on this planet for, besides being a wife and a bonus mom with my movement, why I retired from sportscasting. It is simply to know thyself and to be able to know what fills Ron's cup, what fills your cup as a human being, not as a CEO, not as a mama, not as a daddy, not as a sister or brother or whatever job you hold. I just worked with Border Patrol for the many times down in Yuma, and asked them, who are you behind the badge? And, I was doing an exercise with them about how to dream with your kids and how to get a poster board and write down all your dreams with your kids as an activity. And then also to write down the things that, fill your cup. Is that jogging? Is that hiking? What did little Ron want to do? What did little you want to do? And so what I teach people to do is to take, let's just say, a journal. And on one side of the journal, you're going to write all the things that, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'll send them this inner child meditation. It's fantastic, because all we are is big people walking around in big bodies and little people living inside of us. So on the left-hand side, you're going to write all the things that little Ron wanted to do. He wanted to play the piano. He wanted to travel to India. He wanted to write write music. He wanted, I'm just going to keep going, right? He wanted to be the statewide best wrestler. He wanted to win the Super Bowl. So all of those things. And on the right-hand side of the journal, you're going to write all the things that right now at this moment make you feel like a better human being, make you feel more loving, peaceful, happy, well-rested. I do tell men, don't laugh. Well, you can laugh. I say for men, I want to exclude sex and working out. I want to go deeper than that. What we call it soul care in my movement. And it's deeper than self-care, because self-care can be, I'm going to get my hair done. I'm going to go, wash my car. I'm going to go for a jog. That's great. But soul care is deeper. So what do you can do? It might be meditating. It might be praying. It might be taking a hike. It might be, making music. Mm-hmm. It might be journaling. It might be praying. I don't know what that is, but then what you have is you have a roadmap on your soul. And what I tell people is you got to look at you as the grandest experiment of your life, because Ron, you were born with you and you're going to die with you. And the more that we look for external validation, the more we look for, and we all do it through social media or lights or our job or our accolades or the things that we've done in our life, the more it tends to get empty. And so when you do this, you give yourself a roadmap and you really fall in love with yourself, as cheesy as that sounds. And believe me, if I can talk to big bad football players and Border Patrol agents and law enforcement, and by the end of it, they believe me, for the people that are watching your show, I'm telling you, this works.
More good stuff coming ahead with Rachel Baribeau. And first, a reminder that we are at almost the All-Star break of the NBA season. The basketball season is getting intense. Playoff spots being battled for. You can get in on the action at America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 bonus dollars if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use, and you can bet on everything from points, rebounds, assists, money lines, three-pointers made, all that good stuff at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can even combine your bets for a same-game parlay and a chance at a bigger payout. Also, that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Yeah, and for the people watching, this is not a joke. I actually I have a lot of these little things. I love these little books from Target. I use them all season long. For those that watch me on the Vikings game, they show, I'm the stats guy. I'm the nerd. I love numbers. I've always loved numbers since I was a kid. I'm the dad that has to do math homework because my wife is terrible with math. So
Hire a tutor.
So I'm the math guy. My wife does the reading and all that stuff and the book reports. I do the math. And so every time I get that text, hey, they need help with the homework, I know it's math. I know but that's what I do. I love these books. And so I definitely wrote that stuff down, and I truly appreciate that, because that is what you're saying is very true, because external love is what it becomes now. Social media, this thing here, makes it so easy to get both, to get external love and external hate. Yes. Because you look at Jalen Hurts, who talked about all the fans that when he got drafted were like, oh, why are we drafting the quarterback? And those same fans are now loving him. And I love the Super Bowl commercial that talked about that, the barriers and the doubters and all this stuff. And Patrick Mahomes even even bowing down on the podium saying, like, if you still doubt this man, you're crazy. Because Patrick Mahomes knows he's great, but he's also uplifting another man. And I love that because so many people downplay one man to uplift another. When we're talking about Michael Jordan and LeBron James, when we're talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Shaquille O'Neal, like, you don't have to downplay anybody. You know, when you're talking about Brett Bielema versus PJ Fleck, like, you don't have to downplay anybody. Yeah. And I think so often in sports, that becomes the thing. Like, men typically love to hate on other men to elevate another man, and that it weighs. You know, we're humans. Like, we unfortunately we read the comments. Like, I've been caught up in that. Like, when the Vikings, I think we had one of the biggest broadcasts ever for the playoff game, and I got caught reading the comments, and I shouldn't have, because there's some idiots out there. And, you know, and people question, like, oh, how do you know this? And you only played for 2 years in the NFL, or how do you know this? And I go back and I think, like, but I did it.
But you
like,
did it.
You didn't do it. And I don't want to get into that game of, well, you didn't do it and I did it. And then, because then that becomes toxic.
Yeah.
But when, you know, let's talk about, like you said, your initiative. You said you were put on this earth to do this. I love, like, Ryan Clark does the pivot on his channel, and he's come on our show and talked about the pivot in people's lives, or the moment where they knew, this is why this is my life. Like, you know, what moment in your life pointed you at this direction? Like, what did you go through, or what was it where you're like, you know what, from what I know, I can help others?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And I think there's two pivots in my life, and I love Ryan. He's also a friend of mine, amazing dude, amazing king.
Because I know you Louisiana people, I know you guys love each other.
So back 2016 was the first pivot for me. I didn't know it yet. I was doing shows on Sirius, first female host on Sirius XM collegiate channels. I was doing shows, and you remember that summer was, for college football fans, it was a very dark summer in college football. It was domestic violence, sexual violence, Baylor, heels of Penn State. It was very dark, very gross. And I remember doing, you know, prep for my show. And as a woman in sports talk radio, there's not a lot of women in sports talk radio. There's other positions, but not sports talk radio. I would prepare 3-4 hours advance, you know, and for a show. And so I'd be doing my prep, Ron, and it would be negative news. And I thought, my God, what has happened to this sport that I've given my life to? Like, what is going on? And so I was in touch with this guy named Kevin Elko, Dr. Kevin Elko, who works with Nick Saban and the Colts and Louisville baseball. And he said, you know, I said, I have this short curriculum. I didn't even have a name yet, but I said, it's, you know, what makes your heart beat faster? What were you born for? If you think you were just born for sports or being a CEO or being a mom, what a shame that is. And then my experience of domestic violence. Well, I thought I would go into high schools, and I do now, but he then calls Jimbo Fisher at FSU, and I get a call while I'm with my parents out in Jackson Hole. And I still remember, my mom's in heaven now, but I still remember us jumping up and down and going, I'm going to FSU to speak, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh. So that was the first pivot. And I kept doing it for 3 years, and I was doing these talks and sportscasting, woke up with too much to do, like you talked about, and went to sleep with too much to do. And finally in 2019, when I met you in a locker room, I remember your face being in this locker room. Ooh, I'm going to try not to cry. But you know what? I don't apologize for my emotion. But we hosted the first ever mental health game between two Big Ten teams, Minnesota and Maryland. Coach Loxley also lost a son. He had mental health issues. Obviously, PJ Fleck knows loss as well. And both these men have used their pain for purpose. And that's it. We get a choice, bitter or better. And they've used it for the betterment of the young men that have come through their program. So we host this game in conjunction with I'm Changing the Narrative. Nobody's ever done this before. Two Big Ten teams, national stage, all week long programming, joint PSA between the two, all the players and the teams, helmet stickers, so much more than just, hey, it's a mental health game. So much to it. And I didn't even know, I almost wasn't in the locker room. I have to share this with people, but I get ushered in the locker room afterwards. Minnesota wins. And I hear they're giving out game balls. I've never been in a locker room except for later on to do interviews. And so he's giving game balls to different people. And you remember this, and all of a sudden he says, this person means more to our program than we'll ever know. This person has changed your lives. And I'm like, who is this person? You know, I was like, God, that person sounds awesome. All of a sudden he's Rachel Baribeau. And I back in the video, and my daughter, like about 4 sentences in, and she goes, "It's you, Rachel. It's you, Rachel." And it was still to this day one of the most magical experiences. He let me speak to the team afterwards. I talked about his influence. And the reason why I say that was my second pivot is because I woke up the next day, Ron. I got on a plane 33,000 feet in the air to go to Mexico to go do a solo healing trip. The last place my mom and I went together. And I retired 33,000 feet. And I walked away from sportscast and said, this no longer sets my soul on fire. Sports. I just have a different now. I'm not leaving sports. I'm just here in a different, with a different title. And bless the poor person that was sitting next to me on the plane. I mean, I was just weeping and bawling, and they were probably like, want to call the flight attendant on me. But yeah, it was amazing, and that was the second pivot in my life.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I do remember that because we had you on our show for the pregame show, and I remember they were talking about that, and I remember that thought of like when you were saying that mental health and it's okay to not be okay and all this stuff. And I think I actually said a little bit on air, but again, like I tell you, I truly appreciate you for who you are, because again, I think God creates situations and people cross your path, good or bad, and I think. Yeah. In life, we forget about the bad people that cross our lives because we always just want to promote the good. Like I have some villains in my life. I have some currently. Like I have villains currently on social media that literally, I mean, I had a guy tell me like, oh, we can either put the boxing gloves on or do this something, whatever. And I'm like, and in my mind, like I'm from Detroit, Michigan. So the Detroit, Michigan in me is like, like I know where you live. Like I don't mind putting on boxing gloves and coming to you. Like I know you. Like I've seen you. We're not friends, but I know you. But the God in me is like, this person's hurting. Like they're attacking you because of what they see. Like he made a comment about Clinton Portis, and Clinton Portis going to jail and blah blah. And Clinton Portis was on my show and talked about what he went through and how he feels like he was blindsided by people he trusted. And he can't tell his full story because he still has stuff out there. He has to wait. But I know Clinton, and so I'm gonna defend the people I know to the death. Like if I know you and you tell me the truth. And so I remember talking to you about that, about my dad and about my wife and blah, blah. And so I do appreciate you because like in that moment, like, the terms you use, like taking off the armor, being able to be vulnerable with other men. Yes. It's made me extremely like, I hope people see my light when I constantly like, now I'm like guys I know, David Tyree, Ryan Clark, Spice Adams, my friend Jeff, who's a CEO of a dentist practice. I try to daily. Will Bradford works for Revel Moments. He's a model. I try to like uplift them. Like when I saw him model, and he's now on like the Under Armour catalog, and he's on like the Target deal, and I'm like, it's not just about sports. Like I have friends doing other things, it's not just sports. And so I think men need to be able to celebrate men more, because we have no problem celebrating women. Like we love that. Like it's great to celebrate, but I think more men, and so as I look at the villains and the heroes, you're definitely a hero to me. You definitely showed me that, through tragedy, there's triumph, through darkness, there's light. You just have to wait. You got to wait. You got to kind of, get through the muddy waters, and then eventually you'll find a beach. I think there's so much to that. And so truly appreciate the work you do. A couple more before we get to the daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. We're going to let Rachel take most of the time, as we always do, because the guests are a little bit more fun than I am. But when you look at, again, you talked about, you look at like Tanner Morgan's mom, for instance, you've partnered with her, and again, you walked away from TV and sports broadcast and all this stuff because you felt like this was your calling. What is Tanner Morgan's mom, even, having her come alongside from some initiatives, been like for you?
Okay. So before I get to that, I have to tell you, David Tyree is my man as well. He is actually an endorser of my book. I have a book coming out in June called Relentless Joy. And that man wrote the greatest endorsement for my book. Like I wanted to go slap myself and run around the house. And like, I'm like, is he talking about me? Me? I'm like, and yeah, it's one of those full circle moments when something like that happens. Cause then the Kansas State coach, Bill Snyder, is my other endorser. And I'm like, how did this like, So anyway, please tell David I said hello. He's amazing. And here's the other thing I want to say really quickly is that I love what you're doing, because I heard this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but it talked about how empty the sky would be if there was only one star that was shining, meaning that we need all of us to shine. And you don't shine any brighter as a man, Ron, when you dog another man, when you doubt another man. And men are 3 times as likely to commit suicide as women right now. And I will tell you this, I do believe this, that it's passed down generationally. I'm not mad at your granddaddy's granddaddy, but a lot of people believe it came from war or before them, when men were expected to be gladiators and to protect and to kill and to hunt. And they came back, and then they were supposed to just sit at the table and say, pass the potatoes, baby. And you didn't talk about the things that you went through. And so what I want to tell men is, you've never been so masculine. You've never been so strong. You have never been so dang attractive as when you say, I'm going through something and I need some help. Can I talk to you? And then what I teach people to do, it's a great tactic, and I wish I knew who started it, but it's not mine, but I borrowed it. And it's, do you want me to listen to help provide a solution, or just listen to you? And that'll save a lot of fights in marriages and with friendships. But men, I'm telling you, it is the most manly and masculine thing to ask for help. And so I just applaud you, my friend, from the bottom of my heart, for doing that for other men and creating a safe space for other men. And, you know, when it comes to Patricia Morgan, how cool is this? It's the pandemic, it's COVID. He is home. PJ is allowing me, like, I've been with PJ Fleck since he's been at Minnesota every year, usually twice a year. That man, he and his wife are the dearest friends of mine. And he allows me to pour into his players once a week, you know, via Zoom. Right. And I just retired in 2019. And I'm like, yes, God. And then here comes the pandemic, and all of my speaking engagements got canceled within a week. And I mean, if I was Lot's wife from a biblical sense, I'd be like a, you know, pillar of salt, because I questioned God. But so I'm doing these Zooms, and she hears me and goes, who is she? I want to be friends with her. I want to know her. So then Tanner connects us. She then starts volunteering with our movement. I am the front face of it, but you might not know that I train and working on in 2023. I'm training former athletes, current athletes, have one right now from SIU, one from Baylor, and people that aren't athletes, to tell their stories blended with the I'm Changing the Narrative Foundation. And so she came alongside, she serves. I'm about to go do some work in K-5 school, and she is the one that got it started. So, you know, you just never know how life intersects. I'm a Viking, by the way, just so you know, by marriage.
Okay.
So, like, I was a Falcon. I'll always be a Falcon, but I'm a Viking by marriage. And so I told my husband this morning I was doing your show, and he was like, get out of town. He was like, what? He's like, that's so cool. So, yeah, I love how life intersects, my friend.
Yeah, no, and I definitely, like I said, I appreciate all you do. Like, it sounds like you have a lot going on. In the book, when's the book coming out?
June 20th, and it's called Relentless Joy. So if you go anywhere where books are sold and hit Relentless Joy, it's right now, pre-sales matter. If you go grab it, I would so appreciate it. Here's the thing, you said it. I think you need to write a book about it. Seriously, it's exactly what my book's about. I've been through enough. I told people on Radio Row last week at Super Bowl, I've been through enough that I should just pack it up and go live in a cave, you know, and be a bitter Betty, you know, for the rest of my life. I've lost everything. I've been through addiction. I've crawled back. I've lost both my parents. I've been through abusive relationships. I've been through pretty much you can imagine. And instead of being bitter, I'm better. And my middle name is Joy. And so I want to teach people in a dark world how to find, keep, and cultivate joy. And so that's what I'm doing with this book. It's part memoir, part self-help. It's got some journaling space in it. It's a workbook. I think people are really going to love it.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And I promise you I will, because what I do when I go speak in schools, I speak in high schools in Minnesota. I do a speech now called Focus, and the 2 F's are faith and foundation. And I always start with that to explain to kids why I was so happy I had a foundation when I lost my dad and my wife went through breast cancer, because if I didn't, I probably would have become an addict. I probably would have, you know, my best friend is an addict, or one of my good friends is an alcoholic. And so I probably would have gone through that because I saw him struggle with it and go through it over and over again. And I just know, like, I would have probably given up but I had 2 daughters. I couldn't give up. I had to be, the provider. I had to go to games. I had to still, and my wife through it all, she never complained. She wanted to make sure I was okay when I was out. And the whole time. And that's why now I vacation, because I'm like, you know what? I know how short life is, even though I make jokes about it all the time. My kids do a great impression of me because I'm super cheap. But also tell people that, like my friends even know it. Like my friends know I'm cheap. Like I just fixed my own washer machine the other day. And I will say, my wife said that was the sexiest thing she had saw. So I was like, I'm glad I did that one. But yeah, like I'm not paying $400 or $500 for something I can Google.
Yeah.
So I figured it out. I unhooked all the tubes. I cleaned out the deal and went in and figured out the sensor. And I'm like, boom, and it works again. My wife couldn't believe it. And so I changed all the outlets in the house. So like we needed new outlets. I'm like Googling how to be an electrician. Like I changed all the light switches to make them dimmers. Like I painted my entire office. So I painted this room. Like if I can get away with it, I'm going to do it. Now there are certain things I know not to touch. Gas. I'm not going to do plumbing. But if I can do it, I'm going to do it. And so my daughters love to do a great impression of me bringing up like I work so much because they like to spend so much. Where I have an 11-year-old daughter going to get I don't know, gel nails, I guess they're called, gel dipped or something. Yeah, they're like $50 for just the gel. And I'm like, you're 11. But I'm like, you know what? It's Valentine's Day. So my wife, and I defer to my wife when it comes to women's stuff because I don't know what you guys do. So my wife was like, yep, that's what she wants to do. So I was like, all right, fine. It's Valentine's Day. She can get the dip nails for vacation. She's 11. I don't know. Like, I wish a boy would look at her, but you know what? Like, but I totally appreciate that. So being as cheap as I am, I know life is short though. And so that's why I do secretly like these vacations. Because I do like to get away. I like to be, her parents go with us every year, or they invite us every year. So we're thankful to have them to invite us every year. So we go down there with them, and they're 12. They have 12 friends. They go to this spot every year. So we have now started going with them, and it's like life is short. And so it is a chance to decompress, as you said, it is a chance. But last one before we jump into the daily 3, when you look at your life, you know, and you're able to kind of transition and say, if I could do this, or if there was something I could change, or if there was a person I could really get involved with, like, or a school I would love to speak at, is there something on like because you talked about these lists as kids, like, is there some on your list? Like I don't know, maybe you want to jump off the top of the Empire State Building or so, I don't know, but is there someone on your list that you're like, Rachel has to do this before she dies?
Yeah. So like professionally, I'll tell you this. Last year I got a call from the NFL to make me a player engagement speaker. So that is like going to the Olympics as a speaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe I'll ping you and see if you'll help me, but maybe you go to the Vikings and speak to the Vikings, man. That would be something that I would love to do. And the coolest part of it is I don't have children, but I have bonus children through a marriage. And so when my kids hear me speak, it's pretty amazing. But I think you nailed it before, and it's how to have that work-life balance. I don't know about you, but when I go on vacation, by the time I come back, I am fired up.
Yeah.
I mean, I am like, I got my to-do list. I'm on fire. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's work-life balance, but it's also now the next generation of what I want to do. The next iteration is going to speak to NFL teams. So yeah. And a big one I just did. I wrote a freaking book.
That's huge. That's huge.
Coming out a published book. I mean, I'm just like, what? You did that, Rachel. You did it. So yeah,
that's huge. Yeah, no, I have said that for years, that me and my friends, we've joked about writing a book. So my best friends are Jeff McCall. He played at Columbia. Yep. He's now the CEO of a dental practice across the Midwest. Will Bradford, same thing. We all grew up in Detroit together. He is now, he was with the Pistons. He was with the, I forgot the other team he was with, but now he's with Revel Moments is what they do now. So they're doing the podcast and the social media stuff for players to give players a chance to write their own stories. Similar to Players Tribune. He was a part of the Players Tribune start with, I think A-Rod or Jeter, whoever started that.
Yep.
And then Spice Adams, who everybody knows Spice Adams from social media, but our stories are all unique, where I grew up in a household with 2 parents. My dad was at times would be abusive, but I realize now, because when his brain was donated, he had CTE. So I know that was what it was. He just couldn't control his anger. Jeff lost his mom at 10 to cancer. We were best friends. So I went through that with him, which is probably why I hate hospitals to this day. And And then Spice, his dad went to jail when he was born, so he never met his dad until like he was 20 something in the NFL. And then Will, parents never got married, so just always lived in two households. So we all have like a unique story. My dad won 2 Super Bowls, blah blah. Growing up with men like Mel Blount and Tony Dungy, and I think that's what helped shape me. But we all had strong fathers that were there besides Spice, and so our dads would take care of Spice. It was. So we've always talked about it. We just never found the time to like figure out how to write a book as 4 guys. But you definitely gave me an idea while I'm on vacation this time to kind of maybe jot some stuff down and just.
Yeah. And look, and I'm a connector. God made me a connector. So when you're ready to do that, I'll introduce you to some people in the book world.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready to do that and teach you, I'll kind of show you guys how you guys could write what you call an anthology, because it's all of you, or you could just all 4 of you write a book together, and you take a few chapters, and then how lives have come together and what you want to leave the next generation. I mean, here I'm just going to add book publicist to my title. But no, I love doing this. I love inspiring other people. It's the number one question I get with what I do now is, how do I get to be a speaker like you, or how do I write a book?
Yep.
And I don't gatekeep information. I don't gatekeep connections. I don't gatekeep those things. I just believe I don't want to die with my talents and gifts. You know where that came from, Ron? When I was coming up in sportscasting, I had no female sportscasting, like people to look up to the first 10 years, 8 years.
Yep.
And so I failed. I made lots of mistakes working in a man's world, having no woman to look towards. And so I just said at that point in time, I will not die with my gifts. I'm going to help people, and I'm going to share their stuff. It costs you nothing to share people's stuff. You never know somebody in your audience that may need to see somebody else's post or somebody else's course or their book or whatever it is. So I just made a conscious decision 10, 15 years ago that I said, you know what, I'm not going to die with my gifts, and I'm going to enrich as many people as I can around me. And let me tell you, people have done the same to me. And the way I say is, how can I be so loved and so led and so mentored and not do the same for other people?
Well, I will tell you this. I know the people that know the people, and I know the person that's the player personnel director. So I will talk to him because I've talked to some players. We've done some like things at high schools where they send me a video, and then I play it in the high school before I speak, whether it's their thoughts on what I'm about to say or whatever. So I will for sure talk to the guy. Don't want to put his name out on social media, but I will tell you. No, I'll tell you. I don't want the world to reach out to him like, oh, I didn't know that was your job.
Can you imagine being him if you did that? Like tomorrow he opens his email. Ron told me to call you. Ron told me to reach out. Ron, he'd kill you.
He would kill me, but no, he. But I am definitely gonna hook you two up because I know a lot of the Vikings personally, like CJ Ham. When George Floyd was murdered, my daughter was doing the bracelet sales, and I know we ended up raising like $130,000 through Disney, ESPN, and the Vikings were a big part of it. Where CJ Ham and Adam Thielen actually invited us out to their houses, and we did bracelet sales in front of their house with lemonade and ice cream, and so I know there's some good players in that program, and I know there's some younger ones that could definitely hear your message, and even the older ones too.
Yeah.
But I know the Vikings are, I mean, it is a friendly state. You've been here a bunch, you know that. But no, your message, like I said, I'm not a gatekeeper, but I'm also not going to put a bunch of yahoos in front of people, because then those.
But you got to pass the mustard. Come on, Ron Johnson.
No, you're legit. You're legit. So
I gotta be legit. You're coming up in here with like, you got to have your ish together. You got to have ish together for me because guess what? Here's the other side of that. If I recommend you, my name is attached to you.
Correct.
Boom.
There you go. That's where I'm going with that. So I definitely would do that, because I would love to introduce you and let you do your thing in front of the Vikings. So I for sure will talk to them, as well as the VEN people, because I know when we do our Vikings talent stuff, I'm definitely going to make sure they reach out to you when they do some of their things, because I know the new regime, because again, the old coaches are gone. There's a new group of coaches, younger group, Kevin O'Connell, and so it's definitely a different mindset. But we're going to jump into the Daily 3 with Rachel Baribeau. We're going to invite Sam Ekstrom into the show, my producer. It's going to get fun. It's going to be fast paced. And also remember, people, you can download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on your Amazon Fire and your Roku TVs. Just go to your TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, just download, search Locked On Sports Minnesota. But now we have The Daily 3 coming up. Me, Sam, and Rachel. And we have a word from our sponsors.
Thanks, Ron. Built Bar is a delicious treat. And if you don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. Good and good for you. 100% real chocolate, but only 4 grams of sugar. Wonderful flavors like churro peanut butter brownie, only 130 calories, and 17 grams of protein to fuel you. If you need to grab and go, get a Built Bar. And you can get them not only at Built.com, but you can go to your local Sam's Club or Walmart, get the 4-bar box or the 13-bar box in the pharmacy section. Sam's Club, Walmart, and Built.com. Built Bars.
And now it's time for the part of the show that I love. It's the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away, Sam.
All right, Rachel, first question for you. In all of your travels, what is the favorite stadium that you've been in for a game day?
All right, the atmosphere, hands down. I went to Auburn, but atmosphere, hands down, LSU. They're out there barbecuing alligators and hanging out swamps, and those people were partying like 2 weeks beforehand. Like, I have never seen anything like it. And yeah, they are definitely up there when it comes to school spirit, LSU.
Yeah, for me, I hate to even say this out loud, and I can't believe I'm going to do this. Iowa versus Iowa State. It is the most it's like RVs are out there. People are out there like 24 hours in advance with their RVs. They have an RV section. It is nuts. It's an in-state rivalry. So I couldn't imagine. It's like Michigan State, I'm guessing. But Iowa State is actually a really cool atmosphere. Even though we hate Iowa, we know that. I know that. Gophers fans who hates Iowa, we hate Iowa. I know. But the atmosphere at Iowa State. So we're not talking about Iowa Stadium. We're going to go to Iowa State. But the atmosphere, for me, it was the atmosphere of those two teams. Other than that, a cool one, which is very rare, and it's in Vegas, it was Nevada. So Nevada played in Vegas. I got a chance to work for FS1 for Fox, and I was the color commentator for that game. Their atmosphere was cool. And maybe it just was Vegas. I just like Vegas, so I don't know. But the atmosphere was cool. It was very eclectic. It was people from all over just because they were like, oh, it's a college football game. Let's go. So that was actually cool, too. What you got next, Sam?
Yeah. Rachel, you've been around a lot of teams kind of behind the scenes. What is one of the coolest locker room or team cultures that you've been around?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a homer when I say this, but it is what it is. You know it, Ron. You know what I'm going to say. Dude, are you kidding me? PJ Fleck and that program, man, I'm family. They make shirts every time I'm there. You row that boat, swing that paddle, do all the things. And when people want to denigrate PJ Fleck and be like, oh, it's an act. I'm like, no, dude, I've been around him for days at a time, and it's real. It is real. Ask his wife, Heather. It is real. I did a show with the two of them during the pandemic, and they talked all about their family life and who takes out the garbage and, who wears the pants in the family. But side note, but yeah, PJ Fleck, that environment is a true family environment. He loves his players, makes mental health and being open and vulnerable a top priority. Yeah.
I'm going to say Heather wears the boots and the pants. And I think willingly though, I think PJ likes that. What man doesn't want to be taken care of? Let's be real. I made a comment on Twitter, I think, about something. And of course, some idiot was like, oh, so your wife's the breadwinner, because I just talked about how I don't care when my wife plans the vacations and she buys the groceries and she does this at Target. And I'm like, look, great. You're doing the stuff I don't want to do. I will cook if you bring the food. And some idiot, is like, oh, so she's the breadwinner. And I'm like, so if she was, I don't care. Are you serious right now? Is this 1950?
Yeah.
And, but I will say this, this or is pink. So don't adjust your screens. It's not the yellow, it's pink. And so this was actually cool. This was signed by PJ. Signed by PJ, and the note was from him and Heather and the team, because the players actually, a couple players came and said, well, when my wife was going through breast cancer, we got this while she was getting chemo. And so and I remember that because I was like, man, I literally was suffering in silence. I wasn't talking to people about it. We would get chemo every Thursday, and the Fox knew, because I told them I'd be not late. I'd be 1 minute on time, because I had to like be there for, I like had to get her home to make sure she was, you know, the kids were home from school. Her mother would drive from Iowa to help out. If anybody's dealt with chemo or seen anybody go through it, it's debilitating. And so I had to get her home. And but I didn't want to miss work, and she knew that. So her friends would come over. I mean, all her friends were great through this process. And yeah, like it was, I mean, that's why like I took them out to dinner. I don't know when for a birthday, and I paid for the dinner, and they couldn't believe it. And I didn't tell them why. Like I still haven't told them why. They just were all texting me like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you paid for that. Like how much was it? I'll Venmo you." And I'm like, no. And I've never, and one day I will tell all of them thank you, because I don't think I've still not thanking them. Like every day they were there helping me out, because with 2 daughters, I couldn't do hair. I did the best I could. But yeah, so when PJ gave me this, it was off camera. It wasn't like public. He didn't tweet about it. He didn't do a big video with his guys. Like he ran upstairs after the show and then came back down with it and just kind of, you know, and in that moment, I knew it wasn't for camera. It wasn't for TV. Like he knew I hadn't talked about it with people, but he knew what we were going through. And so it's real. The culture is real. And so I do really appreciate that. So yeah, when you say that, like, yeah, it's legit. But yeah, this is a pink ore. So he's for real. And again, I'm the one that kind of, you know, I show people now when we do the show, but I never brought that up. He didn't bring it up. The Gophers didn't make a video of it because my wife was in the Olympics. She's in the Hall of Fame. So they could have made a big hoopla about it just to promote their team and their brand. They didn't do it. And so that's why to this day, that's why I know it's for real. But again, I held the tears back. I did a good job there. So what you got next, Sam? What's the last one before we get out?
Yeah, last one. Rachel, is there an experience you've had more on a personal level, like with a coach or player? Maybe it's PJ, a connection that moved you in some way during your work?
So I mentioned him earlier, and it still blows my mind. I mentioned him earlier, but I hosted the Peach Bowl. I hosted around the Peach Bowl, like a coach, it's this round table, public round table. It's coaches, players, former players, all sorts of greats. And Coach Bill Snyder was on this panel about 3 years ago. And afterwards, we all took a picture together, Dennis Erickson and a bunch of different people. And he said, "Can I get that picture from you?" And thus began the greatest friendship. The man is my mentor. I call him Bestie. I'm his mentee. He's coming to Kansas to hear me speak later on this month. I know his daughter, hear all about his family, know his wife. And so usually not 2 weeks goes by that I'll get on the phone with him and he wants to hear, what's going on with me. And same thing happened before he passed away. And it's still, again, I think one day when I'm no longer here, I'll be like, wow, I got to experience that. Like that was my life. I think that's why I am joyful, is because I live with a sense of awe and wonder and amazement, like at simple things in life. And years ago, I'd interviewed Bobby Bowden, and he told me, bad Bobby Bowden impersonation, but he said, "Shug, if you ever need anything, you just," and he said, "No, I mean it, girl. I mean it." And so years ago, I was writing my first book that did not get off the ground. And I went to his house. Tim Brando set it up. I went to his house and interviewed him, got to know his wife, got to know him, and this friendship developed. And so I can say, that I was friends with the late Bobby Bowden and the current still with us, Bill Snyder. And every single day, I mean, there's, again, not a day that goes by that I don't pinch myself that I get to live this life.
I think the impression was pretty good. It was pretty decent. It was good. I felt it. I could feel it. I could imagine the hat with the glasses, because I was growing up, and I told Peter Warwick this, I was a big Florida State fan. Yeah. And so like Deion Sanders, like I told Deion that when he came to the Ravens, I kind of fanboyed it, not going to lie, like seeing his socks in the locker and seeing the actual Deion Sanders shoe in purple and gold. Like I fanboyed it for about 30 minutes. And then I realized like, I got to go out and compete against this guy on the field. So I got to chill out. But like seeing Deion Sanders, and I mean, I even told him like, dude, I had your cleats when I was in high school. He probably was like, man, I feel old as hell. This dude got my cleats in high school. And we're teammates now. I probably should have said that. Like now I realize I'm like, that probably made him feel old. Like, dude, I had your shoes in high school. Like he probably's like, what? Like, come on, man. But yeah, no. So for me, I think it's a number of people. One for sure is Tony Dungy, and everybody knows that story. Him and my dad were teammates. He offered me my first coaching job with the Colts. If not for him, I probably wouldn't have ended up at the Big Ten Network, because knowing coaching I was able to get in the booth really easily and dictate and talk football. Because as a player, I don't think I understood it as well as I did as a coach. And so Tony Dungy has always been like, and in his culture, like, forget the political side of the world, forget wherever you sit. But when you just hear about his culture period of just respecting women, no cursing, even though you can curse in like with us, when he knew women and kids were going to be at practice, he would let the coaches know that he likes to drop a few F-bombs. Hey, can you just keep it to 1 today? Because we want to kind of taper it back for the kids. Because we don't need a bunch of little 4 or 5 year old kids going back to school the next day saying F you because I heard a coach say that, And so I love this culture. And so for me, that was a person that's always been there. He's always been there for me. And then of course, Mel Blount, who was just on the show as well. Just being able to still talk to those guys and pull pieces of my dad that I didn't know. It's always great to hear those stories now. Cause as a 42-year-old man, I appreciate it. As a 21-year-old man, I just saw them as a bunch of old dudes. I'm like, man, I don't want to hear about this. But now as a 42, I'm like, I appreciate the stories, hearing the old stuff of Jack Lambert and Franco Harris and all that. And, hearing those guys talk about the Immaculate Reception now is crazy. Like, whoa, like I didn't even think about that, so definitely great. But I enjoyed having you on, Rachel. You are awesome. You're an awesome person, awesome spirit. One thing I like to do before we let our guests go is if you could go back and write a letter to yourself, you're going to write a letter to yourself. You can take as long as you want, but I know we got to get you out of here, but write a letter to yourself just real quick. If there's one message you want to hit home with yourself, like maybe it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe it was yesterday, what would you tell yourself and what could help other people as well?
You are loved. You are precious. You are wanted. I had some daddy issues growing up, found out I was adopted at later on in life. They told me when I was 6, but I was adopted at 18 months old by my dad. And so, and I write about it in the book. If my episode of a TV show, it'd be called My 4 Dads. I have like a stepdad, a biological dad, a bonus dad, and an adopted dad. And so I went through that for the first, I'd say my formative years and in my 20s, looking for people and substances and things to fill me up. And it was insatiable. It never filled me up. And finally, I rededicated my life from a faith perspective, but also I learned and I loved me. And I teach this to people. We cannot get from other people what we do not give ourselves. And no amount of love and adulation and admiration is ever going to fill you up if you first do not value and deeply love yourself. Now, I love myself enough, Ron, and to your listeners to know that I've got things I got to work on. I'm a queen under construction. I'll be working, learning, seeking, growing to the day I die. But that's part of loving yourself. I also laugh at myself. I cheer for myself. I affirm myself. And I let God do that for me as well. And so I would say that I see these, you mentioned at the very beginning of the show briefly, I see these people on social media, and I was once one of them, and you could tell the pictures that they're putting out there. They're bless their heart, they're putting all their bits out there in the world, and they're wanting adulation. And as the bonus mothers, I want to hug them and tell them you are not defined by your sexy bits, and you are so much more than your body. You are so much more than your sexuality. And so I can see it. It's almost like it screams through social media posts when people are needing affirmation so badly. And I want to hug them and teach them to love themselves, because when you love yourself deeply, everything else changes around you.
Yeah, no, well, I want to appreciate you. That's awesome to hear. With 2 daughters, I definitely know they need to hear that as they get older for sure. But no, I definitely want to thank you for joining me today on the Ron Johnson Show. For those that want to hear more about Rachel, please go to her socials. Just Google Rachel Baribeau. She is awesome. I've enjoyed getting to know her ever since 2019. It's been a fun ride. And I'm looking forward to the future because that book, I can't wait for that in June. I'm definitely going to make sure I get my hands on one of those. I want to thank everybody for listening, watching, subscribing. Remember, you can subscribe to the free Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel on YouTube. If you want endless Vikings talk with local experts, subscribe to the free Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast feed as well, wherever you find your podcast. And you can find all of our videos, as I said, on YouTube. I want to thank you and have a great day.